it. When it's your opinion, it's yours. Well, everybody got one. I don't know about that part. Did you believe? My thing is this. When it's your opinion, it's yours. Boom goes the dynamite. Oh, man. You don't go somewhere. You are now listening to This Is My Thing with your host, Grenadine. Are now tuned in. Alright guys, so we are back here. Thank you for tuning in. This is the 4th episode of My Thing Is This. And today we're going to talk about some stuff that kind of happened over Easter that kind of made me come up with the idea for this topic. So on Easter morning, I was having a conversation with my sisters. You guys probably have an ongoing conversation in your inbox or like a group chat that you have going consistently on with your family members. So me and my sisters have this group chat that is just ongoing, and every once in a while we always say, hey, what's up, how you doing, whoop-de-whoop-whoop. But this past Easter we started a conversation that really sparked something in me, because I never really took the time out the last, I would say, 25 years. I never really took the time out to really sit back and actually think about where I would have been if I would have let stereotypes, what people say you should be or grow up to be, if I would have let that thought process take me over. So, kind of to give you a quick synopsis. So we were having a conversation, and it basically started like this. One of my sisters asked me, oh, did you know our cousin was in town? And I'm like, no, I didn't. And I'm sure if I did know she was in town, I'm sure she wouldn't have contacted me anyway. So you know how sometimes you guys, if you don't live in the same state as your family, you be having family members visit the state and don't contact you, don't tell you nothing at all. Or maybe that's just me. Anyway, so she's like, oh, XYZ is visiting New York. She ain't say nothing to you? I'm like, no, that girl she don't message me. She unfriended me. Now, a lot of people can relate to this, but during the election and a lot of the stuff like that, a lot of family members dipped off of friends list. And being the outspoken person that I am, I'm going to just go ahead and say it. A lot of people on my mother's side of the family, they are not on the, what are they called? Let's just say they're not liberal. They love Trump. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Anyway, the conversation booted all from that one thing. And the reasons why is because this particular cousin is very judgmental. And I said, I don't really, care to worry about this person. This person don't know my life. I don't know their life, whatever the case may be. And so my older sister was saying, well, don't be bitter and don't be mad. And I'm like, honey, I'm not mad and I'm not bitter. But when somebody know that they secretly, watch porn, but then want to turn around and, judge other people because they weren't virgins before marriage, that's a whole nother story. That's somebody I have to deal with. You can love your family from a distance and not have to deal with them in your life. Simple as that. It's not a bad thing, but people need positive energy in their lives and around them. And if that's not you, then there's no reason for you to let those type of people in your life. So we were just talking in a conversation, and then my other younger sister, she goes and she says, man, we need a 3 sisters play. And so, of course, me having the production mind that I have, and then my older sister, she's an aspiring actor. We came up with a full-fledged script. Okay, y'all, a full-fledged script in the inbox about our life, and how if we was to write a book or a Netflix series or a movie about our life, it will literally win an Emmy. Because a lot of people don't know too much really about those deep down dirty secrets. I mean, I share a lot online, my sisters share a lot online, but when people see us on the outside, they're just like, oh, those, they just such wonderful sisters. Even people in our family They look at us like, oh, they are so close, whoop-de-whoop-whoop. But it took a lot for us to even get to the point of how close we are. So I told my sisters, I would try to make a podcast out of their stories, or at least us having a conversation. But I wanted to tell my side of the story for this episode of My Thing Is This. And basically, I kind of started a conversation saying we need to throw in some key events. You know how you got those key events that happened in your life where you know what year it was, you know how old you was, and that probably would be the climax of your life story. We were kind of doing that. So we was throwing out, I'm like, yeah, Casey, it got to be the tennis racket scene. It was a time when I was younger and my mama got so tired of me and my older sister fighting all the time. And now she's 5 years older than me, you guys. And so my mama said, you know what? Y'all go ahead and fight. And the first one to cry is over. And so I always call that the tennis racket thing, because we went on a full-fledged fight to the death, but not death. And my mama just let it happen. It was like, y'all want to argue? Y'all go ahead and fight until y'all get over it. And y'all, listen, I'm talking a 5-year difference. I'm like 6 or 7, and my sister is like 11 or 12 years old. Okay, and we just did not get along like that. And the reason why we call it the tennis incident is because the only reason why she was the one who cried first is because I picked up a tennis racket and I started beating her with it. And the only reason why I cried second is because she threw me down some steps. Of course, nobody was hospitalized, but it was, when we look back at it, we'd be like, dang, our mama really let us fight and didn't do anything to stop it. So that would have been a climax. We talk about how my sister had this moment in her life where she really, really hated my daddy. She ran away from home a few times after my parents got divorced. I've been in like crazy relationships with people. A lot of crazy stuff happened to us growing up and as we got older. And a lot of those things from my story, you guys will definitely probably hear my sister's story later, but my story deals in a lot of things that deals with sexual abuse, and I would say sexual manipulation. Maybe there's not even a phrase for it, but in the essence, I can say it is a lot of sexual abuse that happened with me at a younger age. And the way I turned out at 33 is not what they say a person should have turned out. They say that people who've either been raped or sexually molested, they grow up drug addicted. They grow up, with all these issues and problems, and they need to see, their mental health issues and problems and whatever. I always say, well, I don't always say, but as far as this conversation that me and my sisters were having in this inbox, I said, look, I should have been a cracked out hooker in Vegas if people knew the things that went through in my life. Okay? Now, of course, I won't say any names. I won't expose any names, because at the end of the day, these people are still family members. But when people say the African American family has a lot of sexual stuff, sexual harassment, sexual abuse that happens in the African American family, and then they just don't like to talk about it, listen. That is a fact, and I know it is true because it has happened to me. And so that's why I titled the name of this topic, not a stereotype, or stereotype blocked. That should have been me. Now, I have one auntie in particular where I literally was touched between the ages of 6 to 10, literally was touched by all 4 of her kids, 3 boys and 1 girl, all of them, each and every one of them. And being a kid, I'm sorry, you can't blame a kid because the kid don't know and the kid don't understand. And when you have somebody who is touching you at 5, touching you at 6, touching you at 7, it becomes a pattern where you think that is what people do. You think that's how you're supposed to act. So you can tend to act that same thing out on other people. Now, this happened when I was younger, and I grew up in the city of Detroit, and I lived on a block in Detroit on the west side. Now, everything I'm saying to you guys right now is everything that we talked about in this inbox, and my sisters had no idea. No idea. But at the same time, they told me that the same thing happened to them. Now, that is some messed up stuff. And so when I see these movies and I see these stories online where one sister, it was a story a while back where it said a lady, she had 3 daughters, and she moved a family friend into the house, and 2 of them became pregnant. One had to keep her child. And you sit and you think, like, why didn't they talk to each other? Why didn't one sister know about what was happening with the other sister? And so when you see that, it makes me sit and it makes me think back. My sisters had no idea, and I had no idea about my sisters. But being that something like that happened to me at a young age, I still went to school every single day, never missed a day of school. When my parents got divorced at 10 years old, I didn't act up in school. I got even better grades. I didn't act out. I didn't become like bad. I didn't get into drugs. I was still scared to drink liquor until I was 21 because I had some weird idea that if you drank liquor before 21, that the police will know. I had a healthy, fear of the police. Well, back in the day, I grew up with friends and none of this stuff happened. So let me tell you what I mean when I say having this stuff happen to me by family members growing up. Now, before I go any further in the story, I want to explain that the only good thing that comes out of this story is the simple fact that I never had any actual penetration happening to me until the day I actually lost my virginity when I was way much older. So that can be the only good thing that came out of this. But knowing exactly how big somebody is or what a penis is at the age of 6 and 7 is not normal. It's not something you should know. And so having that happen to me between the ages of 5 to 10, on top of the fact that, every year we had a different family member living with us growing up. Before my mother and father got divorced, we had a different family member living with us every single year until we moved out of that house and the 2 of my parents got a divorce. And I would say them getting the divorce was probably the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, because technically, even getting older, it really didn't even end there. And luckily for me, I had a really good mother who basically created 3 black women who had a strong head on their shoulders. Just to make that part clear, luckily for me, there was no penetration that ever happened between those ages. So to continue on the story, and why I say when this happens to you at a young age and you think that's how you're supposed to act towards other people, I also had friends on my block, like other female friends that was around my same age, and the same thing would happen with them. Like, they would mess around with me, I would mess around with them. And this happened with other females growing up as a kid. Because like I said, kind of crazy for me to even say this, because nobody knows this story but my husband. But I thought it was important to speak out on my personal podcast to say that when things like this happen to you at a young age, it doesn't mean that you have to turn out how the rest of the world says that you're supposed to turn out, because people like to kind of lean on that or cradle on that and say, well, this happened to me this when I was younger, or I got touched when I was younger, so that's why I smoke and drink, or this is why I do smoke to do this every day, or this is why I'm addicted to drugs. Well, that's no excuse, because there's people with a mother and father who've never been divorced, who've been together forever, and they still become drug addicts. That's why I kind of feel some type of way when I see or I hear certain stereotypes put upon people, because when people know me now and people look at me now, they could not imagine the stuff that I went through or dealt with as a child. And my parents never knew, and my sisters never knew. But at the same time, the same stuff was happening to my sisters, which is crazy to me, because these were older cousins, and I'm sure they were probably doing the same thing because they probably did the same thing to each other. I mean, I don't know their story. Or somebody did it to them. This is why I always say, if somebody's doing XYZ, it's because somebody did it to them. And like even growing up and getting older as an adult, I've always been like weary of people when it comes to them being around other people's kids, because I know that feeling. I know how it is. If I ever had a child, I would not drop my child off of nobody's house who has a man living in their house. That's just me. Even now, growing up as an adult, those same cousins, if they want to hang around or be around, no. Hi and bye. Your family, I love you, but no. And it's just kind of crazy, because I really look at it as some people just have a really bad sexual demon, and they don't even know it, or don't even realize that they have a sexual demon. And I use that phrase because my mama used to use it growing up. She used to always say some people got, they got some family curses on them. And I really, really feel that my father's side of his family has some family curses. Over the years, we've got some, bits and pieces of the stories, but I'm pretty sure the same thing happened to some of them when they were younger. And all I can say is, better believe it is definitely something that stops now. Being older, and even my other cousins being older, none of our kids, nobody even hangs around each other, chills or nothing. I know who my cousins are, but our families just don't hang out like that. We don't have family reunions like that. Nothing. It's just plain and simple as that. And it's so crazy to me, because one of my sisters told me that one of these same cousins don't even talk to her no more, hate her so much now because she mentioned it to them as a child. She mentioned, you did XYZ to me when I was a child, and they didn't want to hear that. And ever since she said that, or ever since she brought it up, they've hated her ever since. And I say it's crazy, because I've known this and had this happen to me my whole life, and I say the same thing. There's no point to bring it to these people and bring it to them and let them know what they did, because they know what they did just like I know what they did. But the point is not to let stuff like that shape who you are as a person, okay? Because I still made it to 18 without being addicted to any type of drugs, smoking a weed, doing any type of crack. I don't even like to take aspirin, and I'm 33 years old, and I just say that a lot of people try to say, you could have ended up like this, or this person should have ended like... No, people have choices, and people need to have the right people in their lives so that they won't turn out these ways that stereotypes say that you should turn out. I'm 33 years old, and I don't have any kids. After that happened as a child, nothing else I can say really bad happened to me in my life. I pretty much led a normal life. I mean, I got stories of, long-term relationships or whatever the case may be, but I'm going to save that for another podcast about loving yourself. Definitely didn't turn out how they say you should have turned out. I am a faithful wife this day. On my way to get my master's degree. Always did very well in school and with people. I just overall became a well-rounded person, in my opinion, in my mother's opinion, and in my sister's opinion. And so when I say people really can change their own lives and step back and, make their lives go down a different path, you don't have to tell the whole world what happened to you. I mean, it's good to let it out. It's good to speak to somebody out about it. But for me, keeping it to myself, praying about it, also is something that can also help a person live. Luckily for me, I don't know why, I always just tell people by the grace of God, because a lot of people, sometimes it's hard for me to even be around people who say they don't believe in God when I have proof over 33 years of my life, literally have proof, significant stories and proof why I know God is real when people say they don't believe in it. But now I've come to realize that, you can't get mad just because somebody don't believe in God. They clearly haven't had anything significant happen in their lives that would draw them to the point where they, believe. But like I said, my stereotype was completely blocked, and I give thanks for me having a good mother who, even after she divorced her husband, she wasn't bitter towards him. She wasn't bashing him. Anything bad thoughts we had about our father, we had it by his own actions. She made sure we had a strong head on our shoulders. She made sure we didn't, get pregnant in high school or, any of that stuff that they say that is stereotypical for a black girl, low income, growing up and being raised by a single mother in Detroit. The stuff didn't happen to me, and it doesn't have to happen to anybody. So for this episode of My Things This, I just wanted to share my story in a really short synopsis. Really just wanted to share my story with everybody today to show, because of that inbox that me and my sisters had on Easter, it really made me think about my life and the stuff that we've been through and where we should have been, but we didn't end up there. And even on our worst days, we still try to be positive. We still try to talk positive. We still try to uplift. As far as those cousins, I don't even talk to those cousins. Half the time I don't even answer the phone when they call me. It's like, hey. You know how you smile and nod in people's face? But you better not ever leave me in a room alone with them. And I'm not crazy enough to try to commit a crime towards them or any of that, because I'm not the one to judge anybody. They have to, forgive themselves and admit to themselves, and they have to, answer at the pearly gates or whatever people like to say. But I've also solicited stories from my friends on Facebook. For anybody who thinks that they have a story or want to talk to me on my podcast, I will definitely reach out and have that conversation with you, because sometimes you don't want to tell the world, but maybe you just want to talk about it. Maybe you want to see if anybody else has had these experiences and see if they can relate to anybody else. And so that's basically what I want to do today. Kind of share this conversation I had with my sisters on Easter Sunday. And it was really, really deep, but crazy at the same time. And it just made me think that I really could have ended up somewhere or, looking for love in all the wrong places. And I didn't end up like that. and nor did my sisters end up like that. It's just crazy. I'm sitting here thinking and talking at the same time. But I'm going to go ahead and end the podcast right here. Let me know what you think about that. Use the hashtag #MyThingIsThis anywhere online. Let me know what you think about this podcast. Of course, I always say rate me, thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever case may be. And next week we'll have another episode. Hopefully, I'm trying to set up some interviews. And we'll have another episode next week on My Thing Is This, the podcast with your host, Miss Prina. I'm out.